class, we welcome input and feedback. We always have. And so, good, that takes care of the announcements on that. Welcoming everybody. We say the first part is going to be on basic dowsing. And if you have your pendulum or L rods there, that's great. If not, you can still practice later on that. And so any questions or comments before we get started on this? Okie dokie. So basically pendulums or dowsing is basically searching, getting divination for either answers or searching for objects. And it's been used throughout history, especially you've heard of water witching. And a couple ways that I'm going to just be talking about is pendulums and L rods. And I'm going to go through the brief, what I'm going to talk about just to let you know on that. So I'm going to talk about pendulums first and the steps of creating, of how to work with it. Make sure everybody mute yourself. And of creating sacred space and an intent, and then establishing the signals of how to work with the pendulum. And then we'll practice. And then we go into the types of questioning. And I said there's many different types on that. And then I talk a little bit about energy session and how to use pendulums. And then go to L rods, talking about them. And then finish up with body dowsing and talking just a touch about using it on maps. So that's sort of the itinerary of what we're going to be going over. So, all right, so starting out, and you're welcome to ask a question at any time. That a pendulum can be anything that is a weight on like a flexible string or a chain. You can have a nail or anything on a string that will work as a pendulum. And the first steps in using a pendulum is it's always good to create your sacred space, just to clear the energies, make sure you know your space you're working in is in the highest divine vibration and there's no outside negative influences. So you've cleared your space. And also when you do, like you call it either prayer or invocation of creating sacred space, you're also calling in your helping spirits and helping to raise your vibration of the space and yourself through setting that intent. So that's why I like to always start out with that for any session. And the second is to then set an intent for the highest divine good of what you're going to be doing. For example, you know, the intent can be real simple things like decisions, such as, you know, if you're in the supermarket, which apple do I get? If you feel confident and don't feel embarrassed bringing your pendulum to the supermarket and, you know, using it over to say this one or this one, you know, and having it do that. And we're going to talk about other options when we get to body dowsing. And then also, it's really important to set an intent when you're working with energy. Like if you're doing energy sessions on people or, you know, balancing their chakras, working in their auric or their light body field, you really need to have a clear, clean, sacred space for you and the client and the energy work, because that is such on a high vibrational level. And the third step basically is to establish your signals, which can be yes or no. And whatever the signals can be yes or no, or I'm going to get into a little differentiating about them, but you want to be in as neutral a space as possible for the response. You want to observe the response that is happening rather than saying to the pendulum, like, okay, give me a yes, and you really want it to be a clockwise to be a yes, that is intruding on the process of your own conscious awareness. And so you don't want to be able to do that. You want to be into a very neutral space. So I'm going to backtrack just a little bit, because pointing to that is based on why does dowsing work, and how does dowsing work? And there's sort of three different theories on that. The first is that you are directly connecting with your subconscious. The second is that you are connecting with an even higher level of yourself, or your divine higher self, like another aspect beyond just the mind level of conscious or subconscious. And another one is what some people would say is more of the divine or the mystical, which they have, some places have said that Ouija boards are a form of dowsing. And so, you know, that's why they call it mystical or woo-woo. But scientifically, they say that it's due to something called ideomotor response. And this is where people make the motion unconsciously through subtle muscle movements. And this is associating your physical, very subtle physical movements that's in your fingers with the response. And studies have shown that people who are especially sensitive to subtle energies are the best at being dowsers. And interesting, they also say that women are generally more, have a greater ability to use dowsing than men, you know, because women are more into the intuitive side, the left brain, and into the subtle energies. And so that they, you know, have an easier way of being able to do that. And also it's shown that when they did tests, they would ask the different people questions, and first they would have them use a pendulum to get a response. And they would also then ask them using a conscious response. And they found the percentage of people who use the pendulum, or, you know, the dowsing, that compared to the verbal consciousness guessing, the ones using pendulums were more accurate. I think it was like 67% of people using the pendulum, where it was only less than 50% when they use their conscious mind. So I thought that was very interesting, you know, that they've been studying this scientifically, you know, to wondering why it works. And so they figured out that pendulums and the dowsing rods magnify your ideomotor response of the subtle movements in your fingers without perceived conscious control. So again, it's, you know, they don't know for sure whether it's just your subconscious or your higher self, or it's beyond that into divine and mystical. And also they've used these tools to bypass our conscious analysis and our bias. You know, that's a big one. Like you say, I was using, if you know, use a pendulum, you're trying to get the set the signal. You know, I really wanted to go clockwise. That's your bias interfering in the process. And so if you're using these tools and you stay in that space of neutrality and are just observing the response and trusting that, then that works the best. Again, it's also more accurate. And they've also found that using the pendulums, the dowsing rods, you know, the dowsing tools, is an easier way of subconsciously tapping into your own inner knowledge that maybe you don't know, but on a subconscious level, or you could say maybe a past life level where you have this understanding, you're able to tap into that easier through using the dowsing tools. And using this, you know, they've been using it in hypnotherapy for a long time, because when you have a client that's in a deep trance and you want to ask them yes or no questions, beforehand, you say, okay, if there's a yes answer, you will raise your, say, your pointer finger, just real subtly raise your pointer finger. And if it's a no, maybe it's, you know, the middle finger, whatever the hypnotherapist wants on that. And that's because you don't want the client to have to verbally respond because it takes them up out of a deep, the hypnotic trance. And so they've been using that for a long time. And so that's why dowsing is so powerful as an alternative to getting answers on, you say, a more accurate and a deeper level, like saying because of the testing that has been done. So back to the signals that you want to establish. That when you go, it seems there's generally a couple signals. It's either for you when you ask, say, okay, give me a yes, and you just, if you just observe what you, your body, your subconscious, whatever says is a yes, it can either be like away from you or back and forth, which in a lot of times means yes. And if it's negative or no, it can be a cross in front of you. And I say these vary just depending on what you and your pendulum and your subconscious decide how it goes. And or it can be a clockwise for yes and a counterclockwise for no. It just really depends. You know, you have to establish your own way of your signal, what works for you. And like I said, I personally wind up just doing what feels best for me and don't listen to the other books. I'm just a hardcore rebel. So that's just the way I work. So do whatever works for you on that. Like I say, and this also can vary per your intent, which I'm going to talk about in a minute, that the signals may vary. So if you have your pendulums, let's just practice that a moment. And like I say, this pendulum is an angel, violet wings, and a crystal on the bottom. And find a distance that feels right to you to hold it. And you will just know, I know that again, some books will say there's certain rules on how many inches. Do what feels right for you. That's just my opinion. Do what you want. But then, you know, you just ask it, okay, give me a yes signal, and you just focus on it in neutrality and just see what happens. And like I say, mine is going back and forth. So that's my yes. Oh, maybe you can't see it. There we go. And so then I will say, okay, give me a no signal. And immediately you see it changes and it goes horizontal in front of me. So that's, yeah. So you just establish it with yourself and your pendulum, because, you know, then you can work on it. And a very interesting thing, and I like that Carol brought up something very interesting, using the fingers that change the thing, that if you hold your palm upward, and if you put the pendulum over it with no asking it anything, just holding it over there, it'll start to go clockwise. That's because it's going the direction of your electromagnetic field. Now, without moving your pendulum, turn your palm upside down, and it'll immediately go counterclockwise. And that's because it is going with your electromagnetic field. This is not using your ideomotor response or your subconscious or higher self. It is just on the physical energy field that you have. So I just wanted to throw that out there. It's a fun little thing to do. So, okay. An interesting thing. Yeah.
What if it goes backwards? Does that mean your magnetic field is backwards?
Yeah. Oh, you mean it's going the other way? Then clock
Started to.
the way I showed it? That means you're an extraterrestrial.
Oh. That explains everything.
That explains it, doesn't it? You don't belong in this world.
You know, I think it'd be kind of nice if Carol shared what she did.
Oh yeah, because we got a couple more people
It
came
was
on.
very helpful. I thought it was very helpful personally.
Very
Carol,
interesting, yeah.
Yeah.
Carol, can you share that?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Sometimes what I read was sometimes they have a mind of their own, that we may think yes is back and forth. And you can ask them to show them, or your pendulum to show you. So using your middle finger, hold it over your middle finger and ask the pendulum to show you a yes. And this one is definitely going back and forth. Can you see that? And then to use your pointer finger, show me a no. And it changes direction. And show me a neutral using your thumb. Put it over your thumb and show me a neutral, and it will go in a circle. So you've established your communication with us by what this considers a yes, a no, and a neutral.
Okay, well, you were doing that. I just tested that, and I did not, hi, Steve. I did not ask for show me a yes or no. I was in total neutrality, blank mind, and I just held the first, the middle finger out, and it went back and forth in total neutrality, not asking it anything, held the second, and it went, those other ways. So I'm wondering if this is due because you're using your body and your electromagnetic field again, if it's just not automatically tapping into that like the palm chakra thing, rather than your subconscious, because it worked without asking anything.
Okay.
I just want to throw that
Good.
out there.
Yeah, I like that. Yeah.
Yeah, so no, just an idea.
Well, it
Or
worked
just
really well. It worked really well for me. I thought it really activated it quickly. Wow.
Yeah, and so like say that could be related to our electromagnetic field and the combination of the ideomotor response, because maybe the energy, I could say the middle finger is producing that, and so you don't have to ask anything, it's just automatically showing that. I personally like to ask in my head, so I'm knowing what I'm asking for, like especially if I'm going to make a decision, I want to know whether it's yes or no or whatever in that. So that was interesting. We all learned a little bit.
Because mine came out the same. Yes was the same way. No was because I said
Yeah, me too.
yes.
Me too. But I didn't have to ask it. It just was
Right.
using just on the body itself. Doing that.
Wanda wants to say something too.
Oh, yes.
I had a class from Patricia Izzy on dowsing, and I always got mixed signals. It was strange, and she watched me, and I had my legs crossed.
Yeah.
It can mess up the interfere with the energy flow. So you want to make sure your legs are not crossed.
And both feet on the ground.
Yes.
Or on the floor. Yes.
It makes a difference.
And that's why, when you establish sacred space at the very beginning and you raise your vibration, that also assists in the whole process. It works on the higher vibrational energetic light body levels. And again, going down to not crossing your legs, it's working on more in the physical level. So if you address all those and clear them, then you should have the most accurate. So great. Yeah, that's for sure. Thanks, Wanda, on that. So now on to questioning. After you've did your sacred space, your intent, and you established your signals, that the questioning, I found it better to ask to use the term beneficial or non-beneficial versus positive or negative, because the terms positive or negative have so many different meanings. Because in some things, like through, they say that the women have more of the negative energy and according to different, categories, things, and that can interfere. So if you get out of the positive and negative thinking, but go to what's beneficial or non-beneficial to you, that it's more accurate for the response and any intent that you're doing. For example, you can ask, is going to town today beneficial for me to do? And then you ask the pendulum, you know, rather than positive or negative, like say there's too many other connotations of positive and negative. And again, is it beneficial for my highest good or my energy field to wear a purple shirt today? You know, and then see what you get. It's great to practice on clothes because the clothes have the color resonance of the vibration that you may need for that day. And you just, you know, ask, you know, hold a blue shirt and say, is this most beneficial for me today? And see, you know, see what you get. And then going beyond that, sort of going into body dowsing, is you can get beyond that pendulum and you can just hold the shirt, say the blue shirt, you will feel whether it's beneficial for you or not. And to go even beyond that, you can just look at the clothes and you will feel and know whether it's beneficial. So there's different levels of getting the answers. So that's another thing. Okay, another way of questioning is comparisons. And you can be asking like, which is a better, like you want a yes response for which is better. For example, if you're in the supermarket and you hold the apple, you don't even have to hold it. You just put your pendulum and you just ask, okay, is this beneficial or non-beneficial? Because you're basically asking sort of more of a yes and no. And you've established your signal of, you know, beneficial is yes, non-beneficial is no. So you hold it over the end, you'll see it, and then you hold it over an orange because in your mind, you've set that intent before that to compare the apple and the orange, but to take one of them. So then you test it and be able to see which one is most beneficial for you. And so that's a way of doing the comparison. And again, going to the body dowsing level, that if you don't want to be so stand out in the supermarket, you can get to the point where you can just stand in front of whatever you want to buy. And two ways, again, you can just use and point to the object, you know, just subtly with your finger, point to the apple and feel the response. And then going beyond that to a higher level, you just look at the object and feel the response. So what I'm trying to tell you is there are different levels of getting answers, going from using a tool and going into more subtler levels where you just using your pure intent, you're like through your eyes and through feeling with your intuition. And it's quicker and easier and you don't make a fool of yourself in public. So
There's also the body response.
we're getting there.
Oh, okay.
And I knew you were going to say that earlier, that you was do. So, another thing you can use the pendulum for in questioning is percentages. That there's a lot of free dowsing charts, or you can pay for them to get charts that will show like either 0 to 180, 0 to 360 in a circle, and those are percentages on them. And you can ask, like, say you have a vitamin, and you'll ask, what percentage is this vitamin beneficial for me after you establish it's beneficial? And the pendulum will, you know, if you've got the flat paper here, it's hard on this to do it, that it will not move in a yes, no, or clockwise. It will physically move in the direction of the percentage on the paper. It will go from neutral in the direction of, and I'll say like, say 75 on the scale from, you know, 0 to the 360, it will physically move in that direction. So that's another way of using that. And they also have many charts that have like a lot of comparison things already on the chart. It will show different other supplements or foods. So it makes it really easy then just to put your pendulum and ask, okay, which is best for me? And your pendulum will just move in the direction, and you don't need to basically ask yes, no, or get clockwise or counterclockwise. So it's doing a whole new signal that you can work with. Any questions on that? Okay, so that's a very interesting way. And next is that, again, this is another type of signal you have to establish for a different intent, is working with energy. And a lot of people, working with the chakras. And so this is, again, where you change your intent. And so the signal is going to be testing the strength or vitality of each of, say, the chakras. And you then establish with the pendulum what is the signal for strong or weak. So see, there's many variables in this. And for me, strong is a very strong clockwise movement, and weak is a very slow movement, almost like a neutral, or a really not a very neutral chakra is a no movement at all. And if it's really in bad shape, it'll start going counterclockwise. So all of this you need to establish beforehand with your pendulum on those signals, because it's not just yes and no. So seeing there's a whole huge variety of variations when you're using the pendulum. And it's very interesting to see this. And what I usually do with the client is I start out at the beginning and I test all their chakras, and I make a mental note of which chakras are weak, which is the strongest, and do that. And then at the end of the session, test them again. And I get some pretty wild, crazy pendulum experiences. And Pat, would you like to share what you saw the pendulum do when I was doing the energy session?
Yeah, she did an energy session on my husband because he just had surgery on Tuesday. So it was really interesting because it was kind of like, it was like the solar plexus, the third chakra was just like, it was almost like a line there, just nothing, more above and more below. But when she we did the energy stuff, she then tested at the end, and it was amazing. It was like, it went so fast. Everything went so fast, it went like this. The pendulum, it was like, my husband's going like, man, how is it doing that? And are you
doing that?
Yeah. It was really incredible how that really did show the results of the energy treatment. It was just amazing to watch that occurring.
And what was interesting is when it started doing it, when it's really super strong, it will go so fast clockwise that it's horizontal.
Yeah, it was like that.
It was horizontal. And I had to hold it really tight so it wouldn't fly out of my hands and knock Joe out.
I know. Or me. I could have been in the way too.
Yeah, she could have knocked either one out. So that's why I love using pendulums for the energy work, because it's amazing. It's absolutely amazing of what it does.
Yeah, my girlfriend Diane is a massage therapist, well, before COVID, and she would do the pendulum before and after her sessions and would see a huge difference with that.
Yeah.
She, automatically works with energy too.
Yeah, and for me, that's the funnest thing, is working with the energy and just seeing and feeling. And then when working with energy, that's a whole nother topic we can go into another time. So any questions on working with the pendulum so far? Okay, so basically it boils down to practice. Just keep practicing, and remember all these variables of you have different intents for different situations. You have to establish different signals for your different situations, and also keep as neutral as possible, so you're not consciously interfering. And so using the same advice, we'll go into like L rods. These are the L rods, and these are made out of coat hangers. You can just cut them very simple, or you can use welding rods. And basically that when you hold them, you want to hold them. It's hard to see without in person. Let's see if you can. It's really hard to see. You're holding.
I think with your background, it's blocking out a lot of the L rod, unfortunately, because of the way it's done, because we can only see parts of it.
Okay, well, I'm right in front of me. And
That
it's
I can see
still
that a little bit.
a little bit. God, it's so hard to see it. Well, you're basically holding it over your second finger. It's hard to see. You're holding it over your second finger and your thumb is on the side of it and the other three fingers are encasing it. And you want to hold it loosely, but tightly enough so it doesn't fall out. So that takes a little bit of practice to get to the point of understanding the correct amount of pressure to hold it. And again, you want to establish your yes. And because yes generally is when they're using it to find locations or objects, that as you're walking and in your mind you're going, okay, show me that yes, it is there or the object is found by crossing the rods. The rods will basically go like this. They'll be crossed. And when they're crossed, that means that you have gone and found the object you're looking for. And as you walk and there's no movement, no crossing, then you have not found the object. So that's why they use it in water wishing or water dowsing a lot to find underground water. And it's also can be used, you can use one rod and ask it to point in the direction of a certain energy line or the target. For instance, you can use the one rod and say, okay, point in the direction that the ley line is flowing, or point in the direction where the sacred vortex is. And using the one rod, it will move in the direction. And it's sort of like using the pendulum on the chart with the percentages or getting answers that way. It will move in the direction. So it's a whole different way of working with the L rods. I personally found that I use a pendulum way more than using the L rods. So you can find, different people work differently on that, but it's just, I find it, you have more opportunity to use the pendulum. Yes, Claudia?
Couple comments. My brother used to be in underground sewers and utilities business. And I was talking to him last night about this class today. And he said that some of the guys on the crew were good at dowsing and some of them weren't.
Yeah.
And he had one guy that he said when he used the rods, they wouldn't work, but his dad was really good. So his dad would walk behind him and put his hand on his shoulder. And whenever the dad connected with him physically, the guy who was really bad with the dowsing was able to function and do it. So the dad's connection sent it through him. And a question I have is, do you know if they use the one rod method with remote viewing or with, that's an interest of mine. So remote viewing, whether they're looking on maps when they're trying to locate people or other reasons for remote viewing. Have you guys?
I would say that in traditional remote viewing, from what I know, I was never trained, but because of doing all this light body work and energy work over the years, it's automatically just came to me, and I can do it without knowing how I do it.
Okay.
But in traditional remote viewing, I would say you don't use a rods or pendulum. You're using your own subconscious. Yeah, you're strictly using that. And I would say that that example of the guy and then the other person touching him, that would be the showing the law of entrainment, that higher vibrating father, that other person, when he touches it, that the lower vibrating or that other person would raise in vibration up to the energy frequency of the guy who was talented. And that and that's a law that is known. And so that's why it would work. That just comes to mind of why it does that. So yeah. So okay, as far as the next going into body dowsing, There's one where you can strictly use your body, and generally a yes signal is your body just sways gently forward. A no is it sways gently backward. A no or non-beneficial, or a yes or beneficial. And so you can also use that in the supermarket if you don't want to have the pendulum out. But again, you can go past that physical phenomena into just either pointing at the thing and your energy doesn't regard any space or space, or just with your intent looking at it, you can do the same thing. So it's the degree of practice that you want to get into the subtle energy levels of it. And then going even beyond that, you can start to use your body to feel when you are crossing energy, like energy ley lines, vortexes, or portals. And that's why you heard me said before, the more you practice memorizing the energy signature of energy lines, vortexes, or portals, then when you come up to it, you'll go, oh, I recognize this. This is an energy line, or this is a portal. And it's really cool when you just use your body for that. That's why I do it. I just love it. It's just, I don't need the rods. I don't need the pendulum. And I can feel and then connect intuitively right to the essence of the vortex or portal. Okay, another way of using it is on maps. And I find it's best to use a pendulum on maps. And you can use it for little things of like, is it best for me to stay in this town tonight? You want to compare it to another town and hold it over the first town, and you've established your signal of, beneficial or non-beneficial. Is it better to stay here in Atlanta? And you get, a yes or beneficial or whatever, and then hold it over another location and you will get a yes or a no or beneficial or non-beneficial. Or if you want to ask, what's the best route? What's the best place to go for a high energy park? It's just totally up to you to how you can use it in maps. In advanced map dowsing, you can use it to detect positive or negative portals, vortexes, and energy lines, because your body's pretty big, but to get on the map. But you can also use your palm chakra, or just like your pointer finger, also on the map if you don't want to use a pendulum. So you see there's a whole range of using the tools, going into a higher level of energy frequency, and then using your body, and then going beyond that to the subconscious route of just using your intuition. Yeah, Claudia?
Got another quick question. I live over by the White Elephant, back over there in Las Campanas, so up the hill in the back. And I think there's a portal in my neighborhood. There's probably portals everywhere, but I think there's one that something funky came out of one day. And so it's interesting what you're saying, because now on my walks, I've been trying to teach myself how to feel for the portal. And I don't know that I have it, but I got more of a hit off the street sign and the name of the street than I did off the tree, I think it is. But it's kind of neat that you're saying that, because I have been trying, I guess I've done it my whole life, tried to use my body to feel things. But right now it's kind of a game I'm playing to see if I can get it figured out. And then there was a place in Michigan where I used to live, and we all run into these things where you'll come up on a field. One was in a parking lot behind a mall, and I was like, oh my God, this is the holiest space I've ever been in my life. And I just love to stand there in this parking lot and look out over this undeveloped field and pick up the vibes off the place. And so it's kind of neat to hear you talking about this, because I think we all kind of figure it out on our own to some degree, so I appreciate this. Thank you.
Yeah. And just another quick side note that I'll just tell you an experience I had in Washington, out in just all the wheat fields in the middle of Washington, that there was a negative galactic vortex. And like I say, I've learned to distinguish between portals and vortexes, and the more you practice, you'll get this too. And so, it was negative. And so I asked Spirit, I said, well, what can I do with this? And Spirit said, you need to neutralize it. And I said, okay, how? And it says, create a positive vortex. And so I went, I think it was like 75 feet away from the negative one. And intuitively, with my hand pointing towards the ground, started moving my hand in a clockwise position in a circle, just clockwise and clockwise. And with that, with the intent, it created a positive vortex that was anchored in the land. And then I went back to the negative one, and it kept shrinking and getting smaller and smaller and disappeared. So I'm just saying that's another way you can use your body as the dowsing and going to the higher levels of using your intuition and using yourself to be able to shift these energies. I mean, that's a whole nother topic on that. So I went way over than my planned 15 minutes I was told to do. So I'm turning it over to you guys. If there's any last questions on this. So I hope.
Does anyone's had? I think, are there any experiences anyone's had in playing around with any of this stuff before? Whether they felt in your body, like Claudia talked about, or because one of the things, yes, Carol, we can't hear you.
She's trying.
There she is.
What about using a board or a chart with letters on it and asking it to spell out? Do you use that, or do you just use yes and no questions?
Ew, that sounds like a Ouija board.
Yeah.
Well, no, they are called like pendulum dowsing
Yeah.
boards, but they do look very much like a Ouija board.
Yeah. I would say that ideally you start with the tools and you work up to getting away from the tools, getting into empower yourself to get the answers. So rather than asking, using the pendulum, give me a Larry, L-A-R-R-Y, really slow, get away from that. Just ask your divine higher consciousness or your helping spirits, what is the name, and just open to receive and listen for the answer. And then you're like, say, Ouija board's got a lot of bad energy and stuff that gets attached to it. So the more we get away from that and get into our God self energy, I feel that's the best answer. So that's my reply.
Thank you. Yep, good.
Yeah.
I've got something to share. I've been doing the body dowsing for decades, and it's gotten to the point, a yes answer, I feel a very positive feeling in my solar plexus area, on heart area, and a no, a negative answer, or, if I should stay away from something or whatever, it goes down into the lower, like the sacral and the base area. And it's actually a very negative feeling. So I know whether it's a yes or no answer that way. And I've just developed that over, like I say, decades of doing this. So it is possible, but you have, it's subtle at first. You have to really watch your body and the body signals and what it's telling you, but you can perfect it after that.
It's interesting. Kind of an extreme example of that most people have is when something happens and they feel it in their gut, like, that negative feeling in your gut. I think there's a lot of intuitive sense that people do ignore. I mean, that are really strong, but that we should, like you said, listen to where the energy in your body goes, because I think that's a big thing right there, tuning into that. Anybody else have an experience in that area? I like the forward and back thing. That seems really quick and easy to get into. That was one of the first things, like sensing that forward and back sense. So if people want to explore with that too, that's a really quick and easy way to start to feel some stuff. I know on that level. It's interesting about nature. When you go someplace and what you sense or feel, nature spirits, for example, I have experience where there's this one place on a golf course where we went by this, the green is right next to this little clump of trees, and it's kind of in a hollow that goes down. and a nature spirit drew me to it. You know, it came out of a tree. And for me, and listen to this too, can go up. You can almost feel the energy go up to the third eye when that happens. So be aware sometimes if you feel like almost like coming up feeling, or if you sense something nice in an area, to actually, if it's in nature, it might be a nature spirit wanting to connect with you. Those are cool to just sense and be present to. You know how they talk about tree huggers? Well, actually there are spirits in trees. And sometimes if you just look at a tree and just put some awareness into a tree and ask, like sometimes it'll respond. And then sometimes some trees, like on our street, we have a tree. Although, you know, it's interesting because Deb had seen this too. This one tree has all these like little nature spirits, very vibrant. Interesting, the lady who lived there, couple, she just recently died, and the couple, the husband, kind of negative, very negative. Well, anyway, it's so interesting. The vitality in the tree isn't there right now. So like, I don't know whether nature spirits left or what happened, but it is something to put some awareness when you're in nature onto a tree or a bush or something and just see what's there. I find a lot with trees particularly. So
I'll say something. Back in Michigan, where I'm from, we north of Detroit, there was an area that was really polluted. Was an EPA Superfund site, and for years, whenever I drove down that street, I always prayed for that land and just kept sending it healing. And you know, I just was like, got to do your part, got to help. You know, we got to help heal this stuff here. So, and I always hope that it had some benefit to it, the prayers. So
I think
yeah.
that's a great reminder because our intentions and prayers in that sense are very powerful. There's a lot of experiments been shown that groups of people putting their awareness or attention or whatever can make changes. Are there any other experiences that people wanted to share that they've noticed in their life, even if it's not related to this? You know, we have a few minutes left to like any other areas that you'd like to explore, that you might have experienced something or you heard someone experiencing something. It could be any area of metaphysics that you might want to share some reason, some experience, even if it's mild, just something that would be an interest.
I will. I don't
Yeah.
want to monopolize, but I will. Getting back to that story about that possible portal, I don't know what. Sometime during COVID, I was out taking a walk in my neighborhood, and I just do laps, you know, up and down the streets. And this one day, it was around dusk. I was telling my brother about this the other day. I started hearing this sound, and it was almost the sound of a stagecoach, if you will. It was like clap, 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 clap. But it wasn't a stagecoach, obviously. And it was up, and it was up in the air. And I looked up, and it was wind. And I like the wind out here because to me, the wind is like water, because I miss the water from Michigan. I miss it. And so I've decided wind is water to me. And I get off on it. I really like it. So it was kind of windy that day, and I could see this. I couldn't see it, but I could sense that there was an entity moving from tree to tree, from block to block. And it didn't feel good. I stopped because I was going to cut into that sub, and I stopped and I said, "What is this? You know, what am I hearing? What am I feeling? What am I seeing? What is this?" Because I could just feel it. And this little sense in my head said, "Do not go down that road. It's supernatural and it's bad." And so I stopped and I looked, because my curiosity kills the cat, right? And I was like, I wanted to go down that road, and it's like, don't do it. And I could sense that this thing was big and tall, and you could see the trees moving, and it's like, okay, it was windy, so yeah, the trees are moving, right? But I could feel it, and I could hear it moving from tree trunk, from block to block. And so I stopped and I said, okay, you're not going down that street. You're going to turn the other way as quick as you can and just get out of there. So I just kind of put protection around myself. And so now whenever I walk, I will ask myself, do I don't want to go down that street? Do I want to go into that sub today? Because I do a lot of walking right around dusk. And so I just ask, is this a good day or a bad day? And I've never heard a no ever since that day. But sometimes I'll just tell myself, just don't go there today. Just not today. Just don't do it. And I wonder if it came out of the desert. That was something I've been thinking about. Did it come out of the desert? But I really feel that it ended up in that one tree on that one street. I think that, so after hearing you talk about portals all the time, Starwalker, I'm like, well, maybe there's a portal there. Maybe there's a door, open and close, so it was pretty freaky.
I've never heard of experienced something like that. Has anybody else had any knowledge about that sort of experience?
Yeah. Yeah. They definitely exist, and you can have negative portals in your house. I've had to clear places that there was maybe it was like a foot diameter right in the kitchen on the wall was a negative portal, and I could put my hand up and feel the energy blowing out from it, and it was negative. Or certain pictures will carry negative vibrations and energy, and so you need to transmute it and get rid of it. So yeah, that's out there, unfortunately.
Yeah.
I just curious, does anybody watch last night on CBS? It was on 60 Minutes, and they had a short segment on the government are supposed to be producing, what is it, in either this month or beginning of next, a report on the identified flying objects. And there's supposed to be an official report that they're, because they're basically saying now, oh yeah, something exists and it's going to come out. I thought it was very interesting that it's finally they're acknowledging that they know it's been going on. We know that they know for a long time, but it'd be interesting to see what happened. Did anybody watch that? Did you see that? Oh,
my husband taped it, but I haven't seen it yet.
Okay. The one thing I didn't like is, they're putting out the fear part. Is like, oh, that's going to be a national defense thing, watch out. And, they're going to try to hype up and make fear in society. And I yelled at the TV is, they're mostly good guys. You guys are the bad guys. So this is going to be interesting to see what happens. All right, I'm done.
Well, it is about 12 o'clock. So,
Yeah.
But please, people, think about anything else that next time we get together that you might want to share that you've experienced in any area. Like, thanks, Claudia, for sharing some of those things, and Wanda and all of you, because it is interesting. Leads into other understandings and other kinds of experiences that people might have. So.
Yeah, thank you everybody for coming. I hope you learned more about dowsing. I know it was a lot of information, a lot of variables. I was trying to keep it short, but there's too much information to keep it short. So if you have any questions, you got my email. If you ever need to contact and ask me about any of this stuff, please do that. So thank you.